All right. So as people are coming into the room, welcome to tonight's presentation, Born to be Wild. My name is Kian, and I am an AmeriCorps member serving with Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. Conservation Nebraska's mission is to protect our state's natural legacy by educating the public, supporting communities, and increasing civic engagement. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I have a couple of housekeeping rules to go over. So for everybody who is joining online, know that your cameras are off and you will be muted throughout the presentation. So if you have any questions, please type all of those into the chat or the Q&A section, and we will answer those at some point during the presentation. We also will have a very brief survey following the presentation that only takes about a minute to complete. And this survey helps support programming like this one, so we appreciate you taking the time to fill those out. Tonight, we welcome Lauren Salick, who is the Education Director of the Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. Lauren is from Waverly, Iowa, and holds a BS in Animal Science from the Iowa State University and a Master of Arts in Natural Science and Environmental Education from Hamline University. Her goal is to generate passion and respect for wild animals across all demographics by creating personal experiences and bonds between people and our natural world. So thank you so much, Lauren, for being here tonight, and I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is a really great time to start chatting about animals and how our native wildlife take care of their babies and have their babies and raise them, because it's a lot different than humans, right? And so I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. And I'll just pop out this chat. So if you do have any questions while I'm talking, you put it in the chat and I should be able to see it pretty quickly so I can address whatever questions you guys have. So here at Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, we see about 7,000 to 8,000 animals per year. And this last year we went past that, right? Like 8,500 animals. And I would say about 50% of those are neonates or juvenile animals. So when they're younger, they do have more issues. There's more threats to their safety. There's more stuff going on. And there's also just a lot of misinformation too, because once again, like I said, how animals take care of their young is very different than how humans do. So I am from Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. We are basically an animal hospital for injured and wild animals. This is your quick little virtual tour. Our hospital is off of 97th and Q Streets, down here by Ralston. We are open to the public daily from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. For animal drop-offs. We also have a gift store. Unfortunately, can't do tours to see our patients because they're all, wild animals that are sick and on convalescing. And so it's just like that you would take, or that hospital you would take your dog or cat to, but it's for wildlife specifically. And so just kind of some background too about us. Our mission is twofold. We do want to rescue, rehabilitate, and then return to the wild, all native wildlife that comes to us. We're not farming things out to zoos. You can't adopt our animals. We do want to get wild animals back out into the environment. And then secondly, a really great preventative measure to that is to educate people on our animals. Unfortunately, 95 to 98% of the animals that come in every year are due to human action in some way or form. And we know humans are jerks and sometimes it's on purpose, but a lot of times it's just side effects of things we do every day, right? Driving our vehicles, owning a house that has glass windows, birds, can hit windows, just the trash or the litter that ends up in our environment, animals can eat it, all of that kind of stuff. And so because we have such an impact on wildlife, that is why we exist. So once again, we're not really like pulling bunnies out of coyote's mouths or anything. We understand the circle of life. We're here more to mitigate those larger effects that we as humans have on our nature neighbors. And part of that is understanding native wildlife in Nebraska and how they raise their young. Because it's a hard time for animals when they can't take care of themselves and they are juveniles. And it takes all of us to kind of band together to support them. So we're going to start off with a little bit of terminology. So two things, you may have heard these words. They're used in the English language for a couple different things, but scientifically, when we're talking about baby animals, a precocial animal is something that is born somewhat developed, right? They don't require a ton of care from their parents. Sometimes they'll stay with them, but they can like eat on their own. Generally, they're born with their eyes open, their ears open. They're not quite the helpless baby that you would think of when we're talking about an altricial young. So an altricial young, I kind of like to think of altricial means all the care. They're born less developed. They might have their eyes closed still. They definitely need help feeding, because they can't do it themselves. And so knowing the difference between those two is helpful when considering how adult animals are raising their young, and if we need to intervene. So first of all, my first quiz in the night, we're going to go through basically some of the main baby animals that we see here at the clinic. We're not going to go through them all, but some of the common ones. And then we'll go through some kind of general knowledge at the end. So first of all, this is our first animal of the night. And I would love for you all to drop in the chat what you think this animal is. So a reminder, it is all these photos tonight, for the most part, are from our hospital. So this isn't, it is a Nebraska animal. So it's not, a capybara or anything like that. So what do you think? If you saw this in your backyard, on the ground, and we have a lot of smarties here. I love it. So this is an eastern fox squirrel. A lot of times people come in and they're like, I have this baby mouse. And it's not, this is a squirrel. They got much longer limbs. I don't know. Are you guys, Kian, can you guys see my mouse when I like point at things?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So they have much longer limbs than mice do. You can kind of see their claws kind of come in are a little bit different than mice. Squirrels, good job. Specifically, this is an eastern fox squirrel. We do have also gray squirrels and 13-line ground squirrels and southern flying squirrels in Nebraska. So, but this is by far and away the more common one we get. Now I would like you to drop in the chat. Do you think this guy is precocial or altricial? Now we'll see if people are paying attention. So which one needs all the care? Yeah. Good job. It's okay. This is the first quiz in the night. If you didn't get it right, no worries. This is an eastern fox squirrel, and he is altricial, right? His ears are closed, his eyes are closed, he has no fur. He needs a lot of care from his parents. So once again, altricial, all the care is when they are less developed. Precocial generally is when they're a little bit more able to care for themselves. And there's lots of different varying stuff between that, which we'll talk about. We got lots of stuff to go over tonight, don't worry. So a little bit more about squirrels. If you see those black squirrels, right, those are still eastern fox squirrels. They're the same as the kind of reddish brown ones. They're the same species. They are just melanistic, meaning that the gene that produces melanin in their body is going a little crazy, and they're a little bit darker color. So you can have black squirrels and brown squirrels in the same litter. Squirrels are important, and I put them first because they are our earliest babies here in Nebraska, generally. Last year, I want to say we had definitely gotten our first baby squirrel by now. We haven't yet, but they're coming. So squirrels potentially are starting to build little, they call them drays. They're like little leaf habitats up in the tree and having their babies. And it's still very cold, right? And so that obviously is harder for them to take care of their babies when we have these crazy cold snaps or these frosts during this time. Last year, February 9th was our first one. They do nest in trees. So also think about this time, we have a lot of wind, we have a lot of storms, a lot of people cutting down their trees, maybe not knowing that there are baby squirrels in the tree as well. Their litter size is 3 to 5 babies. Their eyes open at about 3 weeks. They start exploring outside the nest at 6 weeks. The good thing about squirrels, and I'm going to just play this cute little video here, is that generally if a squirrel falls out of a tree and is not injured, you can place it at the bottom of that tree and the mom will come back and pick it up and take it back up into the nest. And so generally this is going to be the best case scenario. When an animal is separated from its mom, there's usually some pretty good strategies that you can employ to get that animal back with their mom, because mom knows best, right? You can't buy squirrel milk off Amazon. So nothing is ever going to compete with her care that she can give her babies, the dietary, qualifications of her milk. So we want to get them back with her if possible, because that's just going to be so much better than, say, growing up with us, because we try our best, but nature is best. So if it's after a long storm and say you find a baby squirrel on the ground, look it over. If you see cuts, bruises, something like that, give us a call, because we do want our vets to assess what's going on with them. But if not, you can put it in a box with a warm water bottle at the base of a tree. And we are very successful with mom will come, she'll pick up her baby, she's able to carry him back up into the nest. And that's always the best case scenario for us. Okay. So the next animal that we have. Oh no, don't look. So this is a white-tailed deer. I gave it away. Do you guys think this deer is precocial or altricial? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm seeing them roll in. This is more of what you would think of as a precocial animal. So when it's born, their eyes are open. They're able to stand and walk within a couple hours after birth. They have fur. They do depend on their mothers, right? So they're going to stay with their mothers and drink their milk, but they're not completely helpless, like, say, the squirrel baby that we saw. Here's the thing with white-tailed deer is they like to stash their babies in spaces and then go off and leave them alone. If you think about it, if you think about Bambi, right? You think about an animal with these big, long, lanky legs. They're not very coordinated. So yes, they can walk within a couple hours of birth, but they're not going to be able to, say, run away from a coyote. So her whole strategy is to stash her baby where she thinks is safe. Now remember, this isn't where we necessarily think is safe. So it could be behind your air conditioner. It could be, on a part of your lawn with some tall grass. And she is going to stash that baby there and leave for the day. Now, this is kind of weird to us, because as humans, we would never leave our human infant home alone and go to the grocery store, but this is completely normal for these animals. And so unfortunately, this is one of the most common ones every year that is kidnapped by well-assuming humans who think, well, I found this deer, it was all alone, I looked everywhere, I watched it from inside my house for 2 hours, and no one came up to it. But that's normal. As long as it's quiet, it's calm, it's sitting down in the brush, you don't see any blood, you don't see anything else going on. So everything is probably copacetic and it's just waiting for its mom to come home. The mom will visit her young, generally more at dawn and dusk time, but not necessarily, right? Every animal has individual characteristics and wants and needs. And so a lot of times when we do talk about animals and we say, oh, they're nocturnal, then that kind of sticks in our brain like, oh, they're only out at night. But not necessarily, right? Animals can make decisions for themselves and do some different things. I did put in here too that in Nebraska, it is illegal for us to rehabilitate them for a lot of reasons. And so we're always going to try our absolute best to get that fawn back with their mom because we cannot raise fawns. So it's a really big deal. if you find someone in Nebraska, Iowa too, if you find a fawn that needs help, do not move it. Call us first so we can figure out what we need to do. Okay, so this one also won't be a quiz because it came up too quickly. That's okay, it's opossums. This is another one that a lot of people think are mice. If you look at the bottom photo, that is how they are come out of the birth canal. So go ahead and drop in the chat whether you think, once again, is this altricial or precocial? If the bottom photo is what they look like when they are born. Opossums are our nation's only marsupials. So thinking about when you know about like koalas and kangaroos, that characteristic that joins them together is right, they have their young develop for some time in a pouch. And so you're exactly right. Opossums are born super altricial. They're literally like a little tiny sacky flesh of organs. None of their bones are fully formed. Their eyes aren't even like really thinking about opening. They're very, very small and underdeveloped. So they do have a very low gestation period. It's very, very short. When they come out of the birth canal, they have to crawl up and make the journey into their mother's pouch, where they continue their development. When they're first born, they're the size of a bumblebee. You saw they're very, very tiny. They must crawl up. Litter size is generally about 20. And this is because generally only about half of those are going to survive into adulthood. It's a tough life for an opossum. It's very hard, right, to be an amorphic little bumblebee with no eyeballs and crawl up into a pouch and survive. It's tough. Once they come out of the pouch too, mom will cart them around as nature's little minivan. And so this is kind of the one animal that when people call us in youths, they say, you know, there's a baby possum and it's on its own. We kind of think, okay, something might be wrong. Because opossum mothers are one of those ones where they will stay with their baby pretty much all the time, right? That being said, when an opossum is about the size of a soda can from its nose to its rump, so not including its tail, they are generally, that's about the size that they are out exploring on their own. So that's a pretty small possum, right? Like still pretty like this big. But it's okay for them to be on their own. They're starting to learn what to do on their own at that point. But if they're smaller than that and they're not with mom, you know, obviously you can see from this photo, it's tough for her to cart all these kids around. So, you know, she gets startled by a dog. She needs to run from a car. Some of them might drop off, and this happens. You can give us a call. We can help you out. I have this adorable photo, this video. So these guys are almost ready to be on their own. So they're snacking on solid foods. Opossums are omnivores, so we've got a big old bowl of eggs and produce and grapes and stuff like that. Unfortunately, when they are really, really small and they're still in the pouch, they do have to be tube fed. Because they're so altricial, their jaw is not even really fully formed yet. So they're very, very hard to take care of. But thankfully, it's one of the things that our staff is highly trained to do. Okay, this one's a quiz. It's an easy quiz. What are these animals? See if you can get the species right, even. Nice, good job, everyone. So they are snakes. And these are specifically common garter snakes. Yeah, Phenopsis surtalis. Bull snake is a good guess, though. We do definitely have bull snakes in Nebraska. These guys I chose because they're the most, if you're gonna find some baby snakes in your yard, they're probably gonna be garter snakes, right? They just come out looking like little noodles. They are very precocial, right? All reptiles and amphibians, for the most part in North America, are going to be born and receive little to no parent care. They look like mini versions of the adults. They're on their own. they hatch out of eggs, they're able to hunt insects and be on their own from day one, which is kind of crazy. Some eggs have, or some snakes do lay eggs, and some snakes have live birth. We have both of those types of species in Nebraska. Garter snakes are ones actually that have live birth. So they come out and they're living and they do all the things and they're not in an egg. I always like to note that it's exceedingly rare for us to find venomous snakes in Omaha, although it does happen. Generally, if we're going to find a venomous snake in the Omaha or Lincoln metro areas, it's going to be a copperhead, which is the least venomous snake that we have. It's going to be more when you get on the western side of the state and the southern parts of the state that you get into maybe like the timbers and the prairie rattlesnakes. This top left picture is a copperhead juvenile. Fun fact, their tail is like electric highlighter yellow, which is kind of cool. Additionally, I put on here this picture on the top is the same species as this picture on the bottom. So this picture on the top, this is a juvenile rat snake. And people see it and they see that kind of like diamond pattern and they freak out and think, oh my gosh, it's a rattlesnake, but it's just a juvenile rat snake. So it'll grow up, it'll be solid black, like this black rat snake. They're completely harmless. They do get fairly large, but they're constrictors. They're just worried about eating like mice and birds. But the top picture is what they look like when they're younger. So it can be harder to identify snakes if you don't know what species you're looking for, if they look very different from young to old. Okay, what are these guys? And while you're answering those questions, I have a question from Lynn asking, do we take in fawns? Yes, we cannot. Nebraska Game and Parks and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have a couple species that we are unable to rehabilitate. So if someone calls us about a fawn, we're going to come out and try and get it reunited with mom. If it is injured, we're going to have to work with Game and Parks on a situation, but generally we cannot rehabilitate them. And Ardith says, does the mother bring the baby fawn food or does the fawn find its own food? So yeah, the mother would come back to the fawn and then at that point in time, it would still be like milk feeding, right? So it'd be breastfeeding to their babies. And then once the baby is starting to wean onto solids, it would follow her around more at that point. So this is when it's still just eating milk is when it's going to be stashed. Awesome. Yes, raccoons. Good job. So some of you guys saw they're already starting to get their little eye masks. You can kind of figure out from this photo, they're in an attic. They're the ones that are generally terrorizing people's attics. Are these guys precocial or altricial? What do you think? Yes. Yeah, good job. So these are altricial. Their eyes are closed. They have fur, but not a ton. Their ears are still not open. They still got some developing to do. Raccoons are interesting because they have their babies in dens, right? So if you think about what is a den, what is a fully encapsulated cavity or habitat for an animal in an urban area, that's a lot of times going to be human structures, right? Attics, garages, porches. We don't have a lot of caves in Omaha. We also don't have a lot of hollow logs or hollow trees that are dead and have habitat inside because those are seen as a safety issue, right? And they're taken down. So these are the guys that are most likely gonna come through your chimney if you don't have a chimney cap on, or try and get through your soffit if it's not well reinforced. So this is a good time of year to make sure all of that is safe and covered so you don't end up with surprise neighbors later in the summer. Couple things I'd like to address. Once again, I talked about animals have individualism. They're able to make decisions on their own. So once again, we get a lot of calls like, oh, this nocturnal animal is out during the day. Doesn't that mean it has rabies or is sick? And that's not necessarily the case, right? Especially if a mother has babies that she is trying to fend for, like she might be out during the day trying to get supplemental food. Just because we are diurnal or day animals doesn't mean you don't find us out at night, right? So it can happen that you'll see them out during the daytime, and that doesn't generally mean that something is wrong. Can raccoons climb up the side of a building? Yes. Yes, they can. They climb up the side of anything that they want. They are very highly adaptable climbers, and they do have, 5 fingers. So just making sure also like your drain spouts are secure, anything that they can use to climb. You don't have a lot of extra trellises or something that's going to an open area. So just kind of considering that from that standpoint. They're born April through May. They do stay with their mom up to a year. So a lot longer than a lot of our other mammals. People generally find out they have raccoons in their attic when the babies are starting to feed with their mom, because they can be very loud, kind of make like puppy light sounds. And I just like to always preface too, because I'm going to play this video and it's going to look really adorable. If you Google, can I own a pet raccoon in Nebraska? It'll come up and it'll be like, yes. But that is not the case. You can get a captive wildlife license and adopt a raccoon from a breeder, but you cannot take a raccoon from the wild and keep it as a pet. And so we get, I don't know, 10 to 15 raccoons per year that people found when they were babies, and they raise them. And then they have them as pets, and then, the cops or Nebraska Game Parks or their Humane Society was like, we have to confiscate these now because they are illegal pets. You cannot take pretty much anything from the wild and keep it as a pet in your house. And they're really cute, I know, right? They're adorable. But once again, remember that they do have very specialized diets. They can carry a lot of diseases. So it's just always best to leave that up to the professionals. Their little grabby hands are so cute. I'm just gonna play this one more time. Oh, no, I'm not. We do bottle feed the baby raccoons when they're young. It does take some getting used to, because you don't want them to aspirate the milk, and they can be kind of overexcited sometimes. On the right, you can see when they're a little bit younger, we'll use smaller syringes before we wean them onto solids. These guys are also omnivores. Pretty cute. Okay, what are these animals? Drop in the chat if you know. Woo-hoo. Yeah, they're turtles. Congratulations. And they are snapping turtles. So good job. Some of you might be herpetologists. So these are, like I said, snapping turtles. And you guys have probably gotten the hang of by now. Like I said, reptiles and amphibians are all born precocial, right? They don't get a lot of care from their parents. All species of turtles in Nebraska, even if they're primarily aquatic turtles like snapping turtles, will come on land to lay their eggs. And so they all lay eggs. They do this on land. And so every year in June, all these female turtles come out of the woodworks and start crossing roads and playgrounds, and they're going to lay eggs and have a nest. And people get very confused, and they pick them up and they're like, Mr. Turtle, you're lost. Let me help you. And they drop them back in their neighborhood pond. But if it's a female, she's going to keep coming out of that pond and trying to cross that road so that she can get to her preferred nesting spot. There's a very strong genetic drive for our native turtles to lay their eggs in a similar, like generally the same spot every single year. And so you can see this is a photo of, this was a snapping turtle who was like, well, this is my spot. This is where I lay my legs. And there's a construction site right next to it. They're about to bulldoze this whole area. And so we had to go in and remove the eggs because they're going to be laying concrete down. They can travel up to a mile away from their home water territory to lay their eggs. And so it might seem weird when you find a snapping turtle a mile away from water and be like, you'll feel like you need to help and get them to water or give them food or something. But it's a hard, arduous journey that they just have to get through. Urban wildlife have so many threats to their life, and to an extent, you know, we can support them, but they have to get through these natural processes. Young turtles generally live underground or at the bottom of ponds, and so you don't really see them very much, right? They're teeny tiny. They know that they're snack sized. I think I have some more cute videos. I took a picture of one of the animal care staff holding them because you can't really appreciate in this video how teeny tiny they are. And so, but yeah, it'll happen every year. Someone will bring in this turtle and be like, oh, I found him. He must be orphaned, right? He's so small. And it's like, no, he's good to go. Even though he's the size of a $50, right? They can, you know, look for food themselves. They can swim, do everything they need to do. As long as they're in the water. Sometimes they get a little lost and you're like, okay, tiny turtle, you're in the middle of the road. This is not right. And so helping them out it can be helpful. Yeah, when do turtles hatch? It depends on the species, but we're usually looking at kind of late June into July. And so that's kind of the time when the babies will come out, they'll get to water, and then sometimes even for 3 years, they're hanging out in the water, they're hanging out underground because they're super tiny. They know that they're a snack sized little animal. So you don't see them a lot when they're this small. So there's those guys. These guys are painted turtles. It's a little bit different than our snapping turtle. Oh my gosh. There we go. So if you do find a turtle on the road, because unfortunately, I was just looking at this, I think like 60% of the turtles we admitted last year were females who were hit by cars because they were crossing roads trying to lay their eggs. You can help them to the other side. Couple ways you can safely pick up a turtle would be, one is called the sandwich hold. Shows literally kind of like you're holding a sandwich. You just take your hands on both sides, you can pick them up. They can scratch you with your claws, so just be careful. The other option is the platter hold, where you can hold kind of underneath their carapace and hold them like a platter. This is a little bit safer from their claws. The one thing you never want to do is pick up a large animal by their tail, right? If you think about picking up a toddler by their arm, it's just a small appendage, right? And so it's going to cause a lot of stress and strain onto that area. You can also use a car mat, you know, to kind of push them along. You can use a shovel. You can also just herd them slowly if you're not on a busy street. So those are all options just to kind of help support our native turtle mamas getting to the places that they need to go. Okay, what are these? They're birds. What kind of birds? So who knows the baby birds? And I give you a hint by putting the eggs. Yeah. It's no tricking you guys. So these are American robins. I do like to point out to people that there are other birds whose eggs are blue. So if you find blue eggs, it doesn't necessarily mean they're robins. There are other blue native bird eggs. But we do have robins pretty frequently in the Omaha area. We have 2 stages of birds, right? Well, 3 stages. 3 stages. First of all, first stage, egg. It's an egg, very small, extremely altricial. Second stage, and the top photo here, is a nestling. A nestling should be in the nest. They're naked, they got no feathers, they need to be fed, all of that great stuff. Secondly, we have fledglings, and fledglings are where we start to get into problems, because fledglings are starting to become feathered. As you can tell from that bottom photo, they're not adults, they cannot fly, but they will start coming out of the nest and exploring around. Sometimes it can take 3 or more days for a fledgling to be living on the ground before they're able to be flighted. And so obviously it's a very dangerous time for them. Neighborhood cats or dogs can get to them. Thankfully, their parents generally are in the area and are still feeding them supplementally. you can always just scoop it up and just put it in a different spot. If it's like, say, getting too close to the street, or it's in your, your dog got to it. If it's not injured, you can just pick it up and put it in another place where it is fine. We always want the mother to be able to hear her baby. So you can't move it too far away that she can't hear it anymore, because once again, they do depend on their adult parents to continue to feed them while they're learning how to fly. I'll say this multiple times tonight. Mother birds, mother animals in general, do not care if your son, daughter, goddaughter, pet, bird, whatever, has touched an animal or touched their baby. They will not reject their babies due to scent. I don't know how that myth started. At least in North America, there is no animal that is going to reject their baby because they smell funny. Wild mothers are much better mothers than we give them credit for, right? And so they put a lot of time and resources into their babies. Fledglings are weird. It seems weird for us to have a baby bird on the ground. We want to help, but they don't always need help. Sometimes they're just learning. Now, if you do find a nestling that has fallen to the ground, or there is a bad storm and the whole nest fell, you can put the nest back in the tree. Sometimes the nest has fallen apart, or you can't reach the original nest because it's, say, like 50 feet up. So you can make your own. Here are some photos. You can use like a planter pot. You can use, something from your recycling bin. You can just pretty much do whatever you want. Hang it up in the tree. Whatever you hang, you do want to put some holes in the bottom so it doesn't turn into a pool if it rains. And some sort of stick or something on the side is nice if you do something deeper, because once again, when those nestlings are starting to fledge, we want them to be able to get out of there easily. Backing up, if you use something like this that is more shallow, that's not quite necessary. But it doesn't matter. It can be literally a child's sand plastic bucket, right? Mom doesn't care what the baby's in, what it smells like, if it moved 10 feet. If she can hear it and she can find it, she's still gonna give it care. What are these? Drop in the chat if you know what these little baby hippos are. Yes. These are baby bunny, Eastern cottontails. They have a little bit of non-toxic nail polish on their ear because we keep litters together here at the Wildlife Center, but we do need to specify the individuals. They're very altricial. So in Europe, rabbits will have their babies in holes. They'll dig warrens or dens. That is generally not the case with American rabbits. But we all grew up reading about Peter Cottontail over in Britain and his deep holes that they have babies in. And so we all think that it needs to be in a hole in the ground. And that's for cottontails, that's not necessarily the case for their nest. Their nest is a shallow depression in the earth where they've dug away some of the grass. Now, sometimes if they find a small hole or warren, they'll take it over, right? But that's not always the case. And so a lot of times people find these guys, they're mowing their lawn, out in the middle of their lawn, there's just some grass thrown on top of these babies, and they're like, this isn't a nest, right? In our minds, we think of a nest as like a fully formed thing that something has put time into. And bunny nests are not always that. They're just these shallow dips in the earth that they put some material over. So they're one of the top commonly, probably the most commonly kidnapped animal that we come across. Once again, also because mothers do not hang out with their babies. In fact, they're very, very rarely with their babies. They don't even hang out in the area. Rabbits know they're at the bottom of the food chain. And so if my babies are in this yard, I'm not going to hang out in that yard and lure in foxes or dogs or coyotes, right? I'm going to go somewhere else. So she will come and feed her babies twice, sometimes even once a day, generally at dawn or dusk, maybe 5-10 minutes, but that's it. And then she's done. So people call, they say, it doesn't look like a nest, and I've been watching it. I've had my eyes on it all day. for 6, 7, 8 hours, and I haven't even seen an adult rabbit nearby, it's probably still fine, right? Everything at this point is still copacetic. Mother rabbits should not be with their babies for the most part, unless it is that limited feeding time. This is important to us because they're very, very hard to care for in rehab. They do have to be tube fed. That's very invasive on their tiny little bodies. We want to keep them with their mother if possible. Now, if you do think a nest is abandoned, there's a couple things you can do. We are more like the tic-tac-toe pattern with some dental floss or string. Realize that won't be totally pushed to the side the next day when the mom has fed. It'll just be pushed a little bit or displaced. I don't really like the flower technique because with morning dew, a lot of times that can dissipate because of other things. Also, the biggest problem we have every year is cottontails and dogs. So there's tons of things you can do. This picture on the right is like the top of a pet taxi. We will literally give that to you for free. If you come and stop by, you can put bricks on top of it. You can layer bags of mulch or soil. We understand it's hard when you have a baby nest in your backyard and you are a dog owner. But if you can help them out, they're usually out of the nest within, 15 or so days. So if you can either, put something on top of the nest in the meantime so that your dog can't get to the nest, or walk your dog on a leash for a couple days. Once the babies come out of the nest or on their own, you can just scoop them up and put them outside of your yard, and it's not a big deal. So yes, then I have also, you can do the overturned laundry basket, but there's a small hole cut in. Mom doesn't need a huge area to come in and out. She doesn't care what's on top of her nest. She will still take care of her babies. So I have some other examples of other babies we see in rehab. I can play this video. On the left, we have a bobcat kitten here. Not as common, but it happens. Does anyone know what this picture in the middle is? Any thoughts on what this middle picture? Or any of these? Does anyone know what any of these 3 photos are? Yeah, so ground squirrel is this top right photo, right? Those are the 13-line ground squirrels. We generally actually don't have chipmunks in Nebraska. Those are going to be more limited by the Missouri River, so over in Iowa. But we do have these ground squirrels. Weasel is close. The middle one is an American mink. Pretty cute guy. And the bottom one is a bat. That is a baby bat. So 2 types of bats that we have in Nebraska for parenting strategies. Cavity dwelling bats, like big browns, will leave their babies in their cavity, the attic, garage, whatever is their home while they go hunt. Tree dwelling bats, like eastern red bats, will carry their babies with them when they fly around and find food. So as you can imagine, that's pretty heavy. So sometimes they do drop them. Okay. Here's another page. Does anyone recognize any of these babies? Yeah, so here we have our otter. The top right is our river otter. Yeah, the bottom right is 9-banded armadillos, which is not common for us. That happened once 2 years ago. We had an adult that, unbeknownst to us, was pregnant and had her babies in the springtime. Wood duck, yes, good job. So our bottom left corner here is wood ducklings. They do look similar to mallard ducklings, but mallard ducklings, they're like kind of eyeliner, will connect to their beak. Sandpiper and crane is a good guess. This is a green heron baby, and then on the top left here, that is our southern flying squirrel baby. So they are, sometimes southern flying squirrels will have their babies in attics as well. So we usually get a couple every year that are found in the Lincoln area, in the Lincoln population, that have had issues, get injured for whatever reason. So a couple big misconceptions tonight that we talked about that I want to remind everyone on, is if my dog, child, cat, neighbor, touched the animal, or moved it, even if you took it inside for a few seconds, you can still put the animal back. It is not too late. Animal mothers in North America do not care what their baby smells like. They don't care if their baby was gone for a little bit. They put so much resources and time and effort into their young, and they're not just going to abandon it for a small reason. With that being said, wild baby animals are very rarely truly orphaned or abandoned. So even if you have, a baby bunny nest and in your front yard there's a dead adult rabbit, give us a call, because that doesn't necessarily mean that was the parent. And there's some other kind of detective work and tips that we can give you for figuring out if their parent is in the area. My biggest lesson for the night is if you see an animal that you think needs help, just give us a call first, right? Or send us a Facebook message, whatever is easiest for you, so we can walk you through, because it depends. There's so many species in our area, depends on the time of year, and we can always help walk you through that. Additionally, nocturnal animals awake in the day are not necessarily sick or diseased. Sometimes they got stuff to do. Wood ducks are very hard to rehab. Yeah, they're very kind of just stressed out in general. So their stress levels are hard to help with and keep under control. They can be released safely if we can get them to an immature juvenile stage. But yeah, wood ducks are definitely one of the more touchy baby waterfowls that we have to deal with. So, okay, if I say that they're rarely often truly abandoned, why do baby wildlife come to us, right? Because I told you we get thousands of animals, thousands of baby neonate animals per year. And if you go through our data the last couple years, like 70 to 80% of the baby animals that come to us are injured or were displaced because of pets. So it's tough. I know we love our dogs and our cats. I love my dogs, but they're not always wildlife's best friend. And so part of being a responsible pet owner is just making sure, that we are doing things to mitigate the conflict between wild animals and pets. Sometimes that means you need to just check out your backyard before you let your dog out. It might mean you need to consider, your cat that's outdoors. Cats, unfortunately, do have a very specific and very deadly bacteria on their claws and their teeth. That generally, if a cat has even handled a baby animal, even if you don't see cuts or scrapes on it, we still want to get it in and start it on antibiotics, because cats can be just so specifically deadly to animals. That being said, our dogs get into things as well. Generally, if a dog has handled an animal and there's no open wounds, it wasn't in its mouth, we would recommend it go back into the nest. But there are other things, right? I mean, we also have severe weather. Sometimes, unfortunately, animals are victims to lawnmowers or weed whackers. It's very common for us to be doing outdoor maintenance in times when there's outdoor babies. Okay, so if I'm telling you if an animal's injured, throw everything out the door, you gotta call us because we gotta figure it out. Well, how do I know if an animal is injured, right? And it's more intuitive than you would think. Looking at an animal, if you see signs of blood, right? Not a good thing. If you see large patches or feathers or missing fur. Now I included this picture on the left because this is a nestling baby bird, right? So it does not have, it kind of looks like it's missing a patch of feathers, but they're just not grown in yet. Additionally, on very neonate small animals, their skin is very thin, and a lot of times you can see their organs through their skin, right? So this picture on the left, that is a healthy nestling baby bird. It looks great. Its muscle condition is great. It looks hydrated, but you might, not knowing, having animal knowledge, you might look at that and being like, that just looks weird. So another really good thing is you can always just take some photos too of what you're seeing and send that to us. And we can show you oh yeah, that is bruising, or that's just you're seeing its tummy through its skin. Animals, generally, baby animals should not be cold to the touch. So if you just lightly press your hand on a baby animal, and it feels very cold or cool, that's generally not a good sign. Any presence of maggots or flies generally isn't good either. And if it's dragging or unable to use a leg or wing, that is also an issue that you want to definitely call us. Just a note, trap and release, generally we consider is not a really great solution for a lot of issues. It seems like a very ethical solution when you have a nuisance animal that's hanging out in your neighborhood, you know, to trap it and take it out to someplace like Fontenelle Forest where it's going to have a lot of resources. But unfortunately, there's been a ton of studies recently that have come out that say that the mortality rate of these displaced animals is probably around like 80%. Because of this, Game and Parks has made it illegal to relocate animals in Nebraska more than 100 yards. So you can live trap a raccoon in your attic, you know, fix up the attic and then let it go back outside. But what you can't do is take it down out into the country, you know, 10 miles away. Unfortunately, when we do that, we also spread disease, and we also will truly then orphan baby animals that are left behind, right? So it'll happen time and time again that people call us, you know, I live trapped an opossum or a raccoon. You know, I took it 10 miles away last night, and now I realized that it had babies in my attic. There's nothing we can do at that point other than we have to take them in. If you have more nuisance wildlife questions, this is just a photo of our website, the Wildlife Help tab. We do have ethical and scientific solutions for lots of different species nuisance problems. You can also give us a call and we can walk you through those. If you want to take a picture of the screen, this is another good breakdown of, okay, I found a baby animal. Is it injured? Yes, call us, right? If it's injured, we definitely want to check it out and see what's going on. See what our veterinarians can do to fix that animal to make sure that it is successful in the wild. If an animal is injured, we just want you to keep it warm and not give it food or water. If the animal is not injured, well, then the question is it orphaned? At that point in time, it really depends on what species you're looking at and if it receives parental care or not. So if you ever have a question about that, give us a call. Otherwise, we walked through a lot of the common ones tonight. Just again, one big thing that happens is, you know, we find a baby animal, we want to care for it, we want to help it. And a lot of people's first instinct is to give it some food. If an animal is cold, if their body temperature is low, or they're going into shock, they're going to have very poor digestion. It's going to cause a lot of GI upset, potentially death. And additionally, if an animal is emaciated or it's been in starvation mode for a while, we can get some issues with metabolic disease if you start to feed it too quickly. Additionally, if you think about baby animals, they're really honed into one specific food source, you know, whether it's their mother's milk or a specific type of insect. And so when we give them, you know, whatever Google says baby house sparrows eat, sometimes it can just give them a lot of digestive issues that will kind of add to the issues that they're having. I always tell people, if you were driving on the road and someone was in a car accident and you went out and you're like, oh my gosh, what can I do? Like, can I make you a sandwich? Right? They would be like, what? I don't need to eat right now. I am hurt. When you find animals that are injured or hurt, we just have this innate instinct to give a food, right? And we generally want to steer away from that. If you have a baby and its eyes are open and you want to offer it a shallow water dish, that's fine. If the eyes are not open, they're just going to put their head in there and probably drown. So don't give them water. It's just going to be a safety hazard. But if you do want to offer it to animals whose eyes are open, that is a different story. Because sometimes you find baby animals at 9 o'clock at night and no one is open, right? So you might be saddled with that animal just overnight. Okay. So this is my last slide. This QR code will take you to our link tree, which also goes to all of our social medias. I just would recommend that you do follow us on Facebook or Instagram if you have one of those things, because we do post a lot of educational posts, and we also will share a lot of our baby animals that we get this spring and summer with you all, which is fun. At this point in the evening too, I would like to take the last 5 minutes to answer any questions that you might have. So feel free to put them in the question and the answer or into the chat. Either would be fine.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. I learned a lot.
Good,
Very
good, yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe, Keaton, do you want to talk about where they can see the recording?
Yes. So I see your question about getting a copy of the recording. This is a recorded session and we will have it posted to the Conservation Nebraska YouTube channel in probably about a month, within the next month. So just check us out on YouTube. It's Conservation Nebraska and it should be up there soon.
We had a question about baby beavers. Yes, the answer is we don't see a lot, but we get 1 to 3 every year. We're kind of known in the region for raising otters and beavers, so we also get some from Minnesota or Iowa as well. So we do see a couple of those that we will rehabilitate, yes. Our link tree will also link you to our website too if you're interested in volunteering. If being one of those people in these photos feeding baby animals sounds like something you would like to do, I definitely recommend checking that out and getting trained in soon. Because like I said, we're going to be seeing baby animals before you know it. Additionally, there's also ways you can help. We have an Amazon wish list for our babies as well. And yeah, with that, I'll be honest, what time of year are baby beavers born? It's early in the spring because then they'll hang out in their dams for a while, but that's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head when baby beavers are born. And it definitely it changes depending on the region in which they're in too, right? So like beavers in the southern United States are gonna be born at different times than say up here. If bunnies don't have dens, how do they survive the winter in an urban backyard? Well, they hang out, not in a den. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times they might be like under your deck, or hunkered down in a bush, but it's not like European rabbits where they're gonna have a hole in the ground. They are not really den or enclosed, enclosed, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's not like a raccoon where they're going to be in a cavity type nest. Our rabbits are pretty agile and adaptable to living not in a den. Any advice on skunks? So my advice is if you want to deter them from hanging out around your yard, we generally find that the synthetic animal urine products are pretty helpful. You can buy those like Menards, Home Depot, they're called all different sorts of names, but they're like mimicking the pheromones of a predator type animal. You can get this cheap by going to your nearest friend's litter box too. You can use used dirty kitty litter. Otherwise, that product that you can buy at gardening stores usually is like a coyote or fox urine mimic. And that can just kind of say that like, hey, there's other animals here that are hanging out. The other thing you can do is we just really try and be preventative with animals that are making burrows. So things like if you start to see woodchucks digging or skunks digging, just discouraging them from even starting those nests is really, really helpful because once you have them made, it's a little bit hard to get them evicted. But definitely a more of an olfactory or scent type deterrent is best for skunks. If you need to just shoo them out of your yard, like you need to let your dog out and there's one hanging out, literally just holding a cardboard box or something in front of you, right? And just kind of shooing them away. They'll probably spray the cardboard box, but they won't get you and it won't be a big deal. Awesome. Okay, well, my email is education@nebraskawildlife.com. or wildlife.org. So I'm going to drop that in the chat. If you do have any other questions, feel free to send them to me via email and I can answer them at any time. Additionally, if you're just more interested about native animals or have any questions, just let me know as well.
Right. I saw a couple more questions come in after you sent that email address. Just one about offering opportunities to volunteer, be an intern, or have a mentor in the Q&A.
Oh, there we go. Yes, we do have opportunities to volunteer, and so going to our website is going to be the best way to learn about that information. For volunteering, you do need to fill out an application and then go through training because you are working with wild animals. And you're going to want to do that before the springtime and all the animals start. So definitely check out our website in regards to that. Also on our website, we do have college internships. So if you know a college student that's looking for an internship with wild animals, we do have paid and unpaid internships as well. And then with skunks are also illegal to rehabilitate. Yep, in Nebraska, they are our top rabies vector. And so we generally cannot do much with them in terms of care, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much again for taking time out of your night, and I wish everybody a good rest of your evening.
Good night, everyone.